When you want to buy a house, you want to go to somebody that knows what they're talking about and that has your interests at heart. We'll be building on values that are the kind that you can put on the front page of a newspaper and that everybody that's associated with the company can be proud of. The business is going to be around forever. Berkshire's going to be around forever. And we want to be in the businesses that are very enduring. We have a railroad that's going to be taking care of people 100 years from now. We have utility operations that will be doing the same thing. And real estate brokerage operations, they will be here 100 years from now. And the ones that do the best job of serving their clientele are the ones that are going to expand. And it'll always be a very important business.
Become better, stronger, wiser, and more unique, and serve the customer better.
Pretty amazing, huh?
I think finding a home that's going to be where your kids grow up, where the neighborhood kids come in, whatever it may be, it fills your life with memories you can't get any other way and brings all kinds of pleasure.
Apologies for that momentary glitch there. We are working out some of the technical difficulties, but I'd like to say hello and welcome to our third installment in our webinar series of Around the World with Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Georgia Properties, co-sponsored and brought to you by UnniCo, Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Georgia Properties, and the World Trade Center Atlanta. My name is Max Sutherland. I'm President and CEO of the World Trade Center Atlanta and moderator of today's presentation. I'd like to take a moment to quickly introduce our team. You can see this. Left to right, we have here Melinda McBrayer from Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Georgia Properties, myself, Max Sutherland. We have Alex Wizorek. I'm sorry, Alex, I've got to get that down. From UnniCo, and Danila Palmieri, also from UnniCo, and John Parkerson from Hall Booth Smith, our resident attorney. And I hand it over now to Alex. Alex, take it away.
Thanks, Max. My name is Alex Wieczorek. I'm the CEO and co-founder of UnniCo, and I work with Danila. Danila.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Danila Palmieri. I am a co-founder and COO at the UnniCo. John, can you introduce yourself?
Good morning, I'm John Parkerson. I'm international business attorney at Hall Booth Smith here in Atlanta, and also have a special guest with us who's an attorney from Mexico City, Mexico. It's Alfonso Garcia Mingo, partner in Garcia Mingo and Tejeda in Mexico City. He has a boutique law firm specializing in M&A and corporate law. Interesting fact, he attended the University of Chicago Law School.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here.
Melinda, you're muted. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Melinda McBrayer, and I am a certified international property specialist from Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, Georgia Properties. I provide domestic and international relocation and property acquisition assistance through our global network of Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices companies and affiliates. And I am happy to introduce today our special guest speaker from San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, and Greg Gunter. He is a lifestyle broker and architect, MBA at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, Colonial Properties. Greg, take it away.
Good morning, team. I think I'm unmuted and on video now, finally. Melinda, we're going to teach you a little Spanish. The way that you pronounce the city name is San Miguel de Allende. Those double L's down here in Mexico, Alfonso can chime in. Those double L's down here are pronounced like a Y. So it's always a challenge for everyone to kind of learn how to pronounce our name, but it's Allende, named for one of our founders of the city. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be with everyone today. Am I going to talk for a bit and then we'll do the video? I'm a little uncertain of the order that we're doing this.
Go ahead and start, Greg, with
okay.
Speaking.
I'll chat a little bit to familiarize you all with the market down here. We're a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We're a 475-year-old city that has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2008. To give you a little comparison, only the banks of the Seine River in Paris are a UNESCO site. So we think that's kind of an unusual designation. I live, work, and play in a UNESCO site. And most of the UNESCO sites in Mexico, as those of you that may have traveled to Mexico might know, are, old pyramids out in the middle of nowhere in the jungle. So we're a bit of a rarity from that perspective. 475 years of preserved history. So the architecture here is beautiful. We have been named the #1 city in the world 3 times by Condé Nast Traveler and twice by Travel and Leisure magazines. So a lot of people have been down to visit and are pretty, fairly familiar with our town. We're a small village, about 100,000 people, but we're one of the largest expat destinations in all of Mexico. So with about 100,000 people proper in the city proper, our municipality is about 50% larger than that. We have about 14,000 expats that live here, either full-time like me or part-time, where they'll spend 6 to 9 months a year here and the other 3 months maybe back up at their home in the United States or Canada. About 65%, I'm a realtor and a broker. I just opened the first and flagship office for Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices here in San Miguel de Allende. 2 weeks ago, we opened our second office here in Cancun. So we also have an office in Cancun. For most of you have probably heard of Cancun. Some of you may not have heard of San Miguel de Allende despite all the press. We're in the international press about 3 times a week. So we do still get a lot of press here. But anyway, we're a big expat community. So most of the people that live here that are Americans and Canadians are retirees. They come down here to live on a very affordable lifestyle. And to give you a feel for that affordability, we don't have any such thing as cookie cutter homes here. We have no mass home builders down here. So every home is unique and different. You can buy a starter home in the heart of our village where you can walk everywhere from about 300,000 and homes top out at about 2 million. We only have about a dozen homes a year that we sell in our entire city. that are above $1 million. So we're a very, very affordable market. Georgia Properties has an incredible luxury division. I love the work that you all have done, and you've got some incredible properties there. And it's funny, our luxury collection level starts at 500,000 here. So we're a whole different level of luxury than in Georgia Properties. We're much more affordable to still be in a luxury collection division. Our homes here for the luxury collection, like I say, started about $500,000. So still very affordable. And a home that size, for instance, will only have about $750 a year in property taxes. Your electricity will run $1 a day. Your internet for fiber optic cable will run $1.25 a day. Your water runs $18 a month. Utilities are very inexpensive. Cost of living is inexpensive from the standpoint that a maid is about $3 to $4 an hour. Semi-skilled labor to repair your home is about $4 to $5 an hour. We have no natural disasters here, so as a result, hardly anyone has homeowners insurance here either, because there's nothing to insure against. The home can't even burn down because everything is masonry here, so any kind of wood that's in the home is purely visual or a design aesthetic. So it's a very affordable lifestyle down here, and everything is custom crafted. So the architecture is just really astounding. People love to see the homes. We have a video to show you here in just a little while that will show you some imagery of a lot of our homes here, and will give you a feel for the custom craftsmanship that's available. It's a very old world style craftsmanship where all the wrought iron is handcrafted. Nothing is ordered from a catalog, for instance. So everything here is very custom created, and the lifestyle is incredible from a social infrastructure perspective. A lot of people, again, know about Cancun and Cabo San Lucas and Puerto Vallarta. Those cities are great for a 2-week holiday, but they don't really support a year-round lifestyle like we do here in San Miguel. We have like 5 theatrical companies that constantly have theater in English. We have the opera. We have 6 or 8 different musical organizations that constantly have performances. Our jazz and blues festivals is going on right now as we speak. We have the largest bilingual writers conference in the world, for instance. We have the Guanajuato International Film Festival, which is the largest bilingual film festival. So the social and cultural infrastructure in our little town is the equivalent to a city of about 750,000 people, because we attract so much, money from the United States and from Mexico City. We're a big destination for the Mexico City crowd because we're only about 2.5 hours from Mexico City. So that'll kind of give you a good little background about, the lifestyle here and why people love to come down and either buy a vacation or second home or, move here full time like I did. And at some point, Danny or someone I think might be able to start up that little video that we have to show you all.
Okay, can you hear me? Let me share my screen.
It's not on yet, Melinda.
Here it goes.
Okay. No video. Have no video, sound only.
There's no video.
No.
We just hear the music.
Okay. You see it now?
We do not.
Well, I apologize for that. I shared my screen.
So Greg, while Melinda is trying to figure out that, let me ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
You said there's no natural disasters. We've seen a lot of hurricanes that have come through this season. So where is San Miguel de Allende in relation to Cancun? You said it was 2.5 miles from, 2.5 hours from Mexico City, but is it inland? Is it on the coast? Which coast is it on?
It's inland.
And where is it located?
We're in the very heart of Mexico. It's 6,400 feet in altitude. So we're a high mountain desert plain, 2.5 hours northwest of Mexico City. So the very heart, this is actually the marketing that the municipality and the tourism department does, is we're called the heart of Mexico because we literally are geographically in the very heart of Mexico. The closest beach is a 5-hour drive from here. So I know most people think of Mexico as nothing but a beach. Everyone says, oh, do you go to the beach every day? And I'm like, no, it's 5 hours away. We're like the Kansas City of Mexico, except much more cultural. No apologies to those from Kansas City, but we're in the very middle of the country.
So we have seen also some violent areas in the northern part with some of the, I think the Mormon communities. How far is it from those northern areas that see a lot of violence?
8 hours.
Okay, good. So perfect. That's the perfect location then for retiring.
It's the perfect location. Admittedly, we even have some cartel violence a little closer than 8 hours away. But as I always tell people, you don't say that you're not going to go to Disneyland because you've heard the violent crime rate is high in East Anaheim. You know, for those of you that don't know Disneyland, it's located in a city called Anaheim, California. You know, we're a little Disneyland here in the center of Mexico from the standpoint that we are the most visible village or city in the entire country. So both the local municipality as well as the federal government keeps it very safe here from that perspective. So it's a very safe environment, nothing like the, you know, what you read about along the border and other places.
So individuals that are interested in investing in the area, are there opportunities there to mortgage a purchase, or is it cash only transactions?
Yeah, we used to be, and we still are, in all honesty, predominantly a cash only purchase scenario. And by the way, let me back up and answer another potential question you might have, Max. People own the property outright. It's a fee simple ownership, just like in the United States. Along the coast, a lot of people have probably heard the rumors about, you know, when you buy along the coast or what's called the protected zone in Mexico, which also includes the border. So places like Ensenada and you know, northern Baja or Laredo along the, you know, that border with Texas, those areas are called protected zones, and you can only buy through a bank trust in those locations. But in the middle of the country where we are, you own it fee simple with a deed, just like in the United States. So back to your original question, yes, we do have a new Wall Street hedge fund financing program now. It started in spring of this year, about the same time COVID kicked in and nobody started coming down. Everybody stopped coming down, I guess I should say, you know, when COVID kicked in. But we do have a new hedge fund program that's a very easy to qualify program for financing. The only requirement that's a bit more stringent than in the United States is that it requires a 30% equity down payment, you know, as opposed to in the States, you can get sometimes a 90% loan to value.
Right.
Good question.
Interesting. So do you also have, if this is predominantly a retirement community, are there some retirees that come down and actually either open a business there because they don't want to necessarily be playing golf or relaxing the entire time, but they want to do something, they want to earn some additional income. What are the possibilities with that?
Clearly, there are those opportunities. It needs to be something that you're not looking for a large cash flow from. So, the retirees that tend to do that are, have a fair net worth, and it's something to kind of keep them active in the community. That's what they do. There's a couple that are actually from your neck of the woods around Atlanta that they opened a serape shop here. I know we all think of serapes as what Clint Eastwood used to wear in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but they make these cashmere serapes that are gorgeous and $400. And they've been in, Vogue and several fashion magazines. So they've done that as something that, I'm sure they're making a cash flow on it, but it's not something that's funding their retirement. They were pretty well to do when they came down in the first place. So there are things to do to keep you very occupied. We have 130 NGOs down here. And so many Americans that like to give back to the community will get involved with these NGOs and participate in not only helping fund them, of course, but managing them. So there's a lot to keep yourself, occupied with. If golf, tennis, pickleball, for God's sake, pickleball is a good thing down here. I don't even know what pickleball is myself, but as I joke, I'm one of only 6 gringos here in San Miguel that still work for a living. So that's why I don't know what pickleball is. But, if you're a pickleball fanatic, we even have that. But if you like the business side of things and want something a little more active for your mind, yes, businesses are something that you can certainly open down here.
And I'm sorry, also, before we continue, let me just let the audience know we have 2 features here. We have a Q&A feature and we have a chat feature. If you want to use the chat feature to introduce yourself, use that feature. But for any questions that you want to ask Greg or any of our other team members, pose those in the Q&A feature, please. Greg, back to you now. I was wondering about appreciation values. Recently, we've had a great deal of home ownership appreciation in the U.S. How are homes in San Miguel appreciating?
We're a little more cyclical here, and in fact, we are just the opposite scenario. We are a fly-in only market. Almost no one drives down here because, as I said, we're 8 hours from the border, driving fast, 10 hours for most people, I guess. But, so we're really a fly-in only market. And because of that, we definitely are a depressed buyer's market at this point. So our values have always been very good relative to coming from the coast or even really from the Atlanta area. But that's doubly so. The values that you can find are doubly so now because we truly are. We've been a buyer's market actually for almost 2 years.
So a home that cost $500,000 2 years ago, what is it selling for today?
We've seen discounts as much as 20%. So we're really definitely a good value buyer's market at this point. But back to your point about appreciation and from an investment perspective, Max, in 2018, which was a peak year for us, and I think also for the states, we were seeing properties appreciating at about 18%. Prior to the Great Recession, our properties were appreciating at about 20 to 25%. So in good markets, we do see some substantial appreciation. And we're slow to correct because we typically don't have mortgages here. So people don't have the incentive to adjust their price to meet market demand very quickly. They're remembering the market peaks of 2018. So when I say, we're a depressed market now, people are slow to drop their prices to reach a market demand level. But, after the Great Recession, it took us 3 years to reach that. I think we'll reach that equilibrium a little quicker this time.
And what would your guess be as to the percentage that are purchased and used as rental properties, vacation rentals?
In all honesty, probably 60 to 70%, maybe even a little bit higher. Let's say 3/4. Let's just be generous and say 75% of my buyers actually still have a home in the United States. So when they're not here, they rent it out as a short-term rental. And our short-term rental market in 2018, our little village of 100,000 people had 3 million visitors. If you can fathom that, it's amazing. So the short-term rental market has always been very lucrative here. So people say, oh, I just want to cover the operating expenses. Well, you can not only cover the operating expenses, you can earn up to a 14% ROI on a rental property, only renting it at 65% occupancy. So, you can still spend 4 months a year down here and rent it out the rest of the time. If you're coming down for 9 months of the year, you can still earn, half that, better than you do in your mutual fund, even if you're down here for the majority of the year. Yeah, it's a very lucrative investment from that standpoint.
Excellent. And you mentioned that all the homes there are no cookie cutter homes, so they're all custom built, but are they built by the same developer?
No, we have, I don't know, dozens of different builders around here, and there are, everything is pretty much a one-off. In this central part of town, now this is kind of interesting to note, we had about 7,000 condos permitted on the outskirts of town. But from an American standpoint, those condos, by the way, are really geared toward the Mexico City crowd who only come on the weekend. In most of those large developments, 98 to 99% of those buyers are from Mexico City or Querétaro. So they're fellow Mexican nationals that are just buying a weekend home and they just come for the weekend. Americans love the European village concept of our little town of being able to walk everywhere. They love the concept of the walkability. You all have heard the Urban Land Institute's walkability index in the US. Buckhead is a great example of that, for instance. People love living there and being able to walk to all the shops, and there's a Starbucks no more than 100 feet from you if you need your caffeine fix. People love the same thing here. We have only one Starbucks, so you have to walk a little further, but you can walk one side of the city to the other of the core of our city in 20 minutes. The core of Centro, you can walk in 20 minutes. So that walkability is what really draws people. And in that core area, there are no cookie cutter homes. Everything's one off.
And give the audience a good sense of what the size of these homes in these dollar ranges would be. What size is a $500,000 home, feet wise, square footage wise?
And here's another interesting point, Max, because, obviously I'm from the United States, lived most of my life. By the way, I've been down here for 12 years full time. So, but, I still remember how we did it in the United States. I was a realtor up in the US for a while. I'm mostly a developer, but I was a realtor in the US as well. And in the US, you only measure conditioned space. In other words, you don't include garages and terraces and places like basements and things like that. Here in Mexico, they include everything that has a hard roof over it. So in many cases, my clients that are looking to downsize, move down from what they think of, they see the home sizes here and they go, oh my God, that's huge. It's as big as the home that I had up in Atlanta. Well, in fact, they're including anything that's an outdoor space that has a hard, like a concrete or a tile roof over it. They would be including the garage. They would be including porticos and verandas that have, a roof over it. So the home sizes will look in many cases larger than what we would think of as a real home size from, Atlanta standards because of that. But to answer your question, those square footages that we're using down here are going to run 3,000 to, I just was meeting with clients yesterday, their home is 12,000 square feet. That's a little unusual, admittedly, but 3,000 is not unusual to have a 3,000 square foot home that's 3 bedrooms.
So that 12,000 square feet, what price range is that going to be? Is that the million, 2 million?
That's about $1.3 million.
$1.3 million.
Yeah.
Very good.
Do the math on that. How's that for per square foot value?
So what is the property tax on that one?
Well, that one would run you about probably $1,700 a year.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. So great. I think there's some great income potential there for people doing investing. What would you, and Alfonso, I'm going to ask you this exact same question. What is the most important 2 or 3 items that any buyer must be aware when interested in buying in the Mexican market, and specifically in the San Miguel the Allende market? Greg, I'm going to ask you that question first, and then Alfonso.
Oh, you're asking me first.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I want both of you to, because I want you from a realtor perspective to answer that question, and then I want Alfonso to answer that question from a legal perspective.
Okay, shoot it by me again. Sorry.
So what are the three most important things that any buyer should be aware of when investing in the Mexican market or the San Miguel market?
It depends on what your goal is. Obviously the three most important rules in real estate are the same as they are up in the United States: location, location, location. There are areas here that appreciate far more than other areas. Let me back up and tell you that our town square is anchored by our iconic Eiffel Tower. It's called the Parochia Church here, for those of you that have seen some of the visual imagery. And the property values here are based on your sight line and your walking distance to that iconic Eiffel Tower figure. So the closer you are, the more expensive the property, the better the appreciation, the better the rental rate, the higher the occupancy rate if you're going to rent it while you're not there. So location is really critical to your investment process down here. Another really important factor is to make sure that you're working with a licensed realtor. Licensing is something that's really new to San Miguel de Allende. In most of Mexico, that's not even a requirement. It's only about a year old requirement here in San Miguel, and it's really important to work with someone that's licensed because they are going to be much more familiar with the market. We have a code of ethics, just like in the United States. So it's important to work with somebody that's going to understand the history, that knows a little bit about the history of the home. Because there's not an MLS here, you can't rely on public data. So the choice of a realtor is really important. And I don't mean to, point fingers at realtors being, the best tool to use, but they really are, because there is no public database that you can say, oh, I know this home sold for X dollars, 2 years ago. You have to rely on the realtor that you're working with. So that's a very important procedure. And Alfonso will probably touch base on this as well, but I have some clients that say, well, should I be working with a real estate attorney also, because it's a foreign country and I'm unfamiliar with, I'm not good in Spanish, I don't know I don't really know how the procedure works. And one of the things that I always like to stress with my buyers is that the notario that closes with you, in other words, the person that manages the closing transaction process here, is like a title company and a closing company rolled into one entity. So there's one guy here, and he's a specially schooled real estate attorney who gets a federally designated position to be a notary, a notario. Completely different from a public notary in the United States. This is a real estate attorney. So he's obligated to protect your interest anyway. He's obligated by Mexican law to ensure that you're getting a property that's free and clear of any liens and encumbrances and has a clear chain of title. So it's a little bit similar to getting a title insurance policy. Even then, people ask me, well, I don't know this guy. He's not a corporate name. Can I still get title insurance? And you can still get title insurance even on top of that if you want to. But, know that every closing that you do, at least with a realtor, a licensed realtor is going to be with a public notary. So it's going to be, a very safe transaction.
Excellent. Now, Alfonso, before I get to you to answer that question, I want to ask Greg another couple of questions here. We know here in the United States that cash transactions can occur as quickly as 3 weeks. What is this turnaround cycle of a purchase for cash transaction in San Miguel versus a mortgage purchase?
A little bit of a complicated answer there. Our typical closing time frame here is 30 days. And, typically most of our transactions are all cash. So, that's the overwhelming majority of our transactions here are all cash. We can close sometimes in as little as 10 days, but 30 days is kind of normal. Now, when you say closing with a loan, how does it compare? Closing with a loan transaction. I'll tell you that I'm the #2 realtor in the entire country of Mexico. And all that means is that I sell a lot of homes. So I've got a lot of history behind me, a lot of sales. And in all those years, I've only done one deal with a loan on it. So that tells you how rare they have been historically until this new hedge fund program came in. But the one deal that I did with a loan on it, it took him 7 months to get the loan from the Mexican lender. And it's a long and very complicated story as to why that is, but it includes things like you have to fly, my buyer had to fly back down and do a Mexican physical with a Mexican doctor to get a Mexican life insurance policy. He couldn't do a physical with a US doctor, it had to be a Mexican doctor. He had to get apostilled copies of his college degree. I mean, things that are ridiculous that, you know, a lender, if you think it's jumping through hoops to get a loan in the United States, you should try the old style loans down here. That's why I say we're thrilled to have this new hedge fund program that's a much easier qualification process. Those, I have not done one yet, in all honesty, Max, but those we should be able to process in about 6 weeks.
Interesting. Alfonso, how will you answer that question about what are the most important issues that an investor or buyer should be aware of, and what are the challenges?
Yes, Max. I think I agree with most of the comments from Greg. I think appropriate due diligence in the context of buying real estate is required all over the place. Mexico has some probably unique features, and Mexico created back in 1917 with the new constitution, created a new communal ownership system for land called the ejido. And ejido lands were very much protected by not only the constitution, but obviously by courts, and the government had a policy towards protecting them. This communal property was dedicated much more for peasants, to use for farming and for raising their families. Back in the administration of Salinas de Gortari around 1988, 1989, a reform to the agrarian law came, and now ejido owners or peasants that own ejido property can privatize them and sell them to third parties, including foreigners. However, that has to follow a process, preferential rights, right of first refusal among ejido members, etc. So I think that's probably one of the key features that people should really look into. And that has to be properly done because you need to go to the ejido board and obtain the authorization, convert it into a private property, and thereafter you can go ahead and sell it in a regular transaction. So taking care of that would be really important. I think the other one, in line with what Greg was mentioning, is today Mexico has passed somehow stiff money laundering rules. And as a matter of fact, in the deeds that Greg was referring to, the notarial deed, today the notaries are required to say specifically from which bank account is the payment being made to and to what bank account is going for. In the good old days, there were literally some cash transactions, and sometimes people would just not declare the total amount so that they could, bring down the taxes applicable to the transaction. So today, Mexico has a stiffer framework. A lot of the banks that Greg was referring to, they also deal today with very, very stiff and complicated KYC type of questionnaires. Know your customer, know who's selling or who's buying. So those are probably interesting things. I think there are probably two more things that I'd like to talk about. This whole concept of the restricted zone that Greg was referring to, which is really a strip of 100 kilometers from the border inland and 50 kilometers from the seacoast inland. Those are really places that are very popular, particularly for Americans who love to have like a beach house in Mexico. Not so much being close to the border. The border is just the border. It's a lot of industrial activity there, but we do every now and then, get hit with work in connection with a home for managers, etc. And I think those are important just because you definitely need to have a trust. It's a Mexican trust, and it's an added layer because, again, foreigners cannot have the direct ownership of the property. Rather, they are the beneficiaries under the trust. And there, I think I would just be careful with the trust fees. Again, with the notary, you also need to be careful because a lot of these notaries, they end up charging on a percentage of the transaction based on a schedule published by the government that allows them to charge that. So it's really doing all of these things that are probably important to consider when you are buying real estate.
So I guess I'm a little confused here. There are trust purchases and then there are outright purchases. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But what I'm also hearing though is gone are the days when you can take a briefcase full of cash, fly down and buy something.
Yeah, that I would never recommend that to a client of mine today.
Good to hear. Greg, what were you going to say?
Mexico is pretty much aligned with the U.S. on this because money laundering had been a major issue in with Mexico and the United States and those bags with cash.
Max, I was going to add a footnote to that. If you all can hear me, I hope,
Yes.
hope you can.
Yeah.
That all of our transactions done, at least in San Miguel de Allende, are done. We are, because we have such a strong American influence down here, the entire real estate industry here operates very, very, very much like the United States. So we use escrow accounts for all transactions here. All the reputable firms do. And those escrow transactions have to be managed by a Mexican company to follow the Mexican law for anti-money laundering. But just to give you an example, if you're an American buying a property down here, your money goes to a bank account in Citibank in New York, and then goes to the seller's bank account, typically also in the United States. So your funds don't even ever come into Mexico. They just have to be tracked by a Mexican entity, which is done through an escrow account, just like in the United States. So it's a very similar process.
So are the purchase prices in US dollars or Mexican pesos?
Well, we all of our websites here and all of our marketing is done in US dollars because everything here is so US dollar based. It's easier to search on the internet, from a dollar transaction because of course we're selling mostly to Americans and Canadians, a few Europeans, but they're recorded on the deed in Mexican pesos because of course that is the national currency.
Right.
So one thing
So is there a currency exchange that goes on?
So I was going to say, I was going to kind of add on to that. It's a good point, Max. One of the things to be aware of, this is more from a seller's perspective, to be honest with you, not so much from a buyer's perspective, but be aware of the current exchange rate and how that will affect your future. So for instance, many of my sellers are coming to me and listing a property that they bought when it was 11 pesos or maybe even 13 pesos to the dollar, which is what it was recorded in at the time on the deed in pesos. And we're now at 21 and a half, more or less, pesos to the dollar. They almost have 100% phantom gain because even though they bought in dollars and they're trying to sell in dollars now, it was all recorded in pesos. So, one of the things that's really important, but also from a buyer's perspective, is to work with a realtor that's going to understand how that affects you and your ownership and, can ensure that they're looking out for your long-term interest and how that exchange rate fluctuation might affect you.
And you mentioned that the purchase funds go into a Citibank escrow account and is transferred to another Mexican-owned Citibank account. Is that correct?
No, it's Citibank in the United States, up in New York.
So if there is a currency, aside from the paperwork, the deeds and everything, is there an actual transfer of funds from the U.S. to Mexico?
The only funds that are transferred to Mexico are typically your closing costs. So as a buyer, they vary from city to city in Mexico, throughout Mexico. So I'm going to address, San Miguel de Allende. Your closing costs are going to run about 5.1 to potentially as high as 5.3% of your purchase price. Just assume it's roughly 5%. 4% of that is an acquisition tax. And 1.1% of it roughly pays the notarios fees, the city's fees for, recordation, the new appraisal that's done by the city. All of those fees are included in that 1.1%. So all of those fees are typically wired down here to Mexico because, of course, the notario is located here in Mexico. The acquisition tax is collected by the federal government, so that's something that gets paid to the government in pesos. But the purchase price remains in dollars and goes from one American account to another.
I got it. So can those funds that are being wired down for closing costs, do they have to go through a bank, or can they go through another institution like Tempest or any other international exchange? I think there's Bannockburn, where you get a more favorable exchange rate than you do through the banking system.
In some cases, our buyers can wire funds directly to the notario's account, and they will disperse them from there. So the closing costs themselves don't have to go through the escrow, for instance. They can. It's just much easier, because they only send one wire transfer to escrow, who then sends it to 8 different entities. But if you want to, you can send it directly to the notario. That'd be like you paying closing costs directly to the closing company.
Yeah, because those banking fees and exchange rates can be more expensive than some of the other foreign exchange service providers. Now, we're all familiar, of course, with realtor commissions. Are they comparable there as they are here? Usually around 6%?
They are. The only difference is that in some cases we're required to charge an IVA, the value added tax. You all are maybe familiar with that when you're buying trinkets when you come down, and there's a 16% value added tax added to services down here. So we're required to charge that on anything that requires a Mexican factura. Now, in San Miguel de Allende, I don't know about Alfonso's neighborhood in Mexico City, but in San Miguel de Allende, the notarios here will now accept an American invoice as a tax deductible expense for all sellers. It used to be that they would only accept a Mexican factura, which is basically a government issued receipt. But now they will accept as a tax deductible expense. The reason I mentioned tax deductible is because it lowers the seller's capital gains tax. They'll accept an American invoice, and in those cases, we're not required to charge that IVA.
Interesting. Okay, I have a couple of questions here from the audience. How far is San Miguel from San Luis Potosi?
It's about an hour and a half away.
North, south, east, west?
We are south of San Luis Potosi.
And let's see, I have another one here. With a mortgage of 30% down, what would be the interest rate and term length for 30? And would it be a 30-year mortgage? Would interest rates reduce with larger down payments, such as 50%?
I saw that question. Hello, Lori. That's my friend Lori chiming in from Dallas, believe it or not. So that's amazing that she's joined us today. But to give you a feel for that, I'm going to address mostly the new hedge fund program, okay? Mexican banks, which do provide mortgage programs, can go as long as 15 years. A 30-year mortgage is almost unheard of down here. Mexican bank loans can go up to 15 years, but the hedge fund one is the one that I'm really thinking is much more applicable to anybody that's buying down here. So to address that, those are primarily meant to be like a bridge loan. So 7 years is typically the longest that they will do. They'll do a 1, 3, 5, or 7-year program, something like that. Because it is Mexico, interest rates are higher than they are in the United States. The risk factor is considered higher.
Right.
So interest rates here can run, with this hedge fund program, in all honesty, can run about 6 to 8%. So, Mexican loans can run as high as 12%. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Good. We have a couple.
By the way,
yes.
Sorry, Max, to finish on that. It doesn't matter how much you put down. You have to put down a minimum of 30%, but the interest rate does not lower the more that you put down.
We only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to give you the opportunity, Greg, to provide closing comments, and then Alfonso as well. And then I want to turn this over to the team to each say a couple of words.
We'd love to have you all come down and visit. Mexico has never had any kind of quarantine restrictions. And San Miguel de Allende, despite what you read in the press about Mexico in general, you know, we're a little bubble, as I mentioned, in the middle of Mexico. Because we have so many expats, American expats living here, and because we are in the limelight of the international press, having been named the #1 city in the world so much, our municipality has been very, very stringent on COVID restrictions. So our COVID incidence has been very, very low down here in San Miguel specifically. I know it's a lot higher in Mexico City, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about flying into our closest airport here and coming directly to San Miguel, and it's very low here. So you can come visit. You have no quarantine restrictions. There's no problems with coming and visiting, and we'd love to give you a tour of the town.
So are there direct flights from the US, or are there connecting flights?
Depending on where you're coming from. So we have 2 airports that are equidistant from San Miguel. One's called León and one is called Querétaro. Each are about 75 minutes equidistant from San Miguel. You fly directly into those from Dallas, Atlanta, especially if you're coming, I mean, Dallas and Houston, if you're coming, you know, from a connecting flight. But I've got clients that come down on direct flights all the time from like LA and, you know, larger destinations. I'm not sure if Atlanta has a direct flight into those, but I think that they might.
Okay, thank you. Alfonso, closing remarks.
Thank you, Max. No, I think it's important, as Greg started his comments. Mexico is still the amigo country. Literally, Mexico has continued to project itself as such in the world. There is, you know, we continue to have
strong belief in free trade, in obviously receiving investment, but certainly there are cultural things that are different. You know, for starters, the language is different, you know, and you know, you say buenos dias, you don't say good morning. So to start with that, I think some of the key issues that any investor, you know, whether it's for real estate or any other activity, you know, business activities, you know, they should be properly advised. It's, unfortunately, being a lawyer is one of those things that nobody ever really wants to go see you. You know, the dentist probably, and the lawyer, and maybe, you know, the owner of the mortgage of the funeral home. But I think appropriate tax structuring early in the game, you know, when you're doing your investment inbound. And I guess in that, you know, you also need to work with your US or foreign lawyer. You know, how are you structuring your investment, you know, coming out of the US or any country and coming into Mexico? I think it's appropriate. And again, I think you need someone really sometimes to take you by the hand and walk you, because like in any other places, you know, there are just humps that you're just going to have to go through, right, or jump, and you know, just be able to deal with those.
Certainly, and I thank you for that, Alfonso. And I noticed that we have the actual the video from San Miguel ready to play. Can we play that quickly?
I hope so.
Let's try that again. And we need sound.
Yeah, Danny, don't forget to share the sound. There we go.
properties. You've made that very enticing, the video. Makes me want to consider also investing. Greg, thank you very much. Alfonso, thank you. I'm going to turn this over from the World Trade Center Atlanta. We're always here to work with you guys as well. Danila and Alex, you want to say a few closing words, and then we'll hand it off to Melinda.
Yeah, just want to say thank you to everybody for attending today. And if you're feeling moving to Mexico and not retiring, but investing maybe in some hotels or some agriculture or something like that, we would love to help. And Greg, beautiful place. I will take that house with the swimming pool. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
John, I want you to say a couple of words too. We didn't give you a chance. Anything that you want to add?
It's hard to add to what has already been discussed. I think for home purchasing, it is better to work directly with local people whom you know, whether that's Greg on the one hand or with Alfonso. Often for other types of investments, U.S. clients will come to me and say, well, can you assist us with our acquisition in Mexico? And, as an international business attorney, that's what I do on a daily basis, is work international deals. But this type of residential real estate is not typical of the kind of deals that we would be engaged with. I think where I would be most valuable is through my network of international lawyers whom I know throughout the world. And I'm fortunate to know Alfonso, and Alfonso is practically a Norte-Americano due to his having studied in the U.S. And so it's being able to know the right people and to act partially as a traffic cop on some of these transactions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Melinda, let's hand it back to you if you want to just say a couple of words about how what role you play in this as well when working with Greg, and give a couple of closing remarks there. And you're on mute, by the way.
As a certified international property specialist, I go through some in-depth training on the culture, how to do business, how to do real estate. As we heard here, it is different for every country. And what that does is it gives me the ability to be able to help people with all kinds of, whether it's moving to a place that you're going to have to do freight forwards, and having those partners that can get them there safely, and with the assurance that they're going to get their household goods from the start to the finish unpacked in their house, and that they won't run into any issues along the way. So it's seamless. So I want to thank Greg for coming today, for presenting. It's beautiful. I want to go and visit San Miguel now. And what I found for the real estate, what are the trends are, is that people are looking with this uncertain political and unrest, that people are looking to move. They're looking to move to a place where the climate is beautiful, where they have a large expat, which it sounds like they have that there. I mean, a great community there for the expats. And they want to just get their forever home and live there and live more inexpensively.
Melinda, thank you. And on behalf of the World Trade Center Atlanta, Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Georgia Properties, and UnniCo, as well as Hall Booth Smith, we'd like to thank you. The team would like to thank you for joining us today. Greg and Alfonso, once again, thank you. And we wish you a great week, and to tune in to our, be on the lookout for our next event, which is coming up in December 9th. It will be Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Quebec Properties. Again, that is Wednesday, December 9th at 12 noon. All right, Eastern time. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.